Um, I want to leave this up now to you guys. Questions, comments, thoughts, anything at all? Even if you didn't like the work, even if you liked the work, what's more important to me is why. So please, I've shared most of these works for the first time. Most of them are not online. Most of them have never been shown before in this exhaustive set. So I do feel vulnerable, and I please hope that you guys have things to say. They shouldn't necessarily be good things to say, because if it's all good, then I don't know where I'll go next. Then there's no place to go after this. Yeah.
Hey Raj, it's not a question exactly, but I would rather like your comment on this. So I've been, through the past few months, I've been going over this thought of why does one medium need to be restricted just to the medium, right? And since you have been writing along with photography, and so I have come to believe that, medium necessarily, like an artist just necessarily they don't need to just restrict themselves to the medium. They can incorporate other mediums and make the body work an art form itself. I would really like to know your thoughts behind this.
See, I completely agree. I don't think that there should be any one rule. I mean, the whole problem, I think, is that there is an art police which includes the exhibitors, exhibition venues, the curators, the festivals that have an ego, not Egaro, sorry, bad pun, but there is an art police that tries to dictate what makes it. And because there's a certain kind of policing that means that only certain kinds of work make it, then even if we do not naturally gravitate towards that, we feel tempted. We feel that, hey, what our own natural instincts are don't seem to be getting rewarded. Maybe it is time to conform. Maybe it is time to fit in. So at one level, I do not want to talk in any absolutes. There should be no art police about how photography should go forward. That said, look, I get where you're coming from in terms of your question about the intermingling of photography with various art forms, whether it's writing, whether it's bookmaking, whether it's design, whether it's poetry. Sorabura did something recently with photography and music. My only concern is, and this is my concern, again, doesn't need to be an art policing statement, is that quite often, look, for me, the fundamental medium is photography. At least I am a photographer. I want to see the photography. I end up seeing a lot of substandard photography that is held together by a lot of jargon, by a lot of words that mean nothing, that are extremely complicated and probably designed to confuse the viewer. Just so that as a viewer, I go and see it and I go like, man, I don't understand this. Must be something nice. Must be something maybe above me. I see great book design, and I'm glad that book design is something that is being looked at so closely in the past few years in India, largely courtesy to Anita Singh and her efforts to champion the photo book as an art object, as a serious consideration rather than just being a collection of photos. And there are some books that get it perfectly right. Great photography with outstanding book design. Some of the Anita's works, Witness, the book on Kashmir that came out recently, those are two examples that immediately come to mind. But then there's so much of great book design with very average photography inside, which for me, again, me being a photographer, is outstanding wrapping paper with a stone inside. So that does concern me. My belief is that use whatever you want, use the music of the Doors, but hopefully the picture should talk. Today the slideshow was a little darker, so maybe they didn't talk as much. But use any art form along with it. Use music, use your writing, use another person's writing, use anecdotes of a certain standard as well, which I do believe sadly is not necessarily happening a lot. if I may say so. I've been guilty of the same thing. On Instagram, average photo, I know that I have to write and write and write, and I'll randomly write something that's rambling, and I'll sit in the train and go like, okay, let's quote this movie, and everybody will click like. So we are all guilty of it, but eventually, as photographers, the focus should be photography. Obviously, somebody else's answer would be different.
Hi Raj.
Hey.
So, considering the kind of work that we are seeing today, very much contrasting to Vivek's work that we have seen yesterday, I just wanted to ask, since the fine art market or the fine art scene is not as such developed in India as of now, so how does, I'll put it very much straightforward, how does a photographer make his living taking pictures like you do?
He doesn't. Okay, let me put it this way, and I think this applies even for me, it applies even for Vivek, it applies for Orko here, it applies for most genres. I think it's become increasingly difficult to make a living out of photography that you enjoy. It's become very, very easy to make a living out of photography, way easier than it used to be. It's become very, very easy to go ahead and tell your stories because the avenues, the platforms online are there. The technology has made it easier for storytellers to adapt to the medium. But then the two happening together, self-satisfying. I'm partially quoting, in fact, something that Swapan Parekh, who's one of my greatest inspirations in photography and also a very dear friend. He said this at Delhi Photo Festival, that it's become increasingly difficult to make a living out of self-satisfying photography. And if anyone has an answer how to do it, please, I'll give you my number, let me know, tutorials in hand. How I do it, the reason why these works have not been shown, apart from the Goa work, which was shown in a much truncated form of this, the reason why most of these works haven't been shown is simply because I have been biding my time. I've been waiting. For me, it's like that chai that you need to brew for a little longer. Like this is not your Twinings ka tea bag, jo 3 minutes mein it's kadak and nice. But simply because I realize that in our country, especially, it's become more and more difficult. These works are not saleable. I hate that word, but these works are not really saleable. Especially, I do find it, I'll be very honest here, I do find it very difficult when I'm applying for a grant. Because, and no offense to photojournalists, there are lots of great photographers I know who are doing outstanding work on relevant issues. Are these irrelevant issues? I don't think so. But to bring about their relevance in the eyes of the art police, and in my own eyes, I often find it sometimes a little difficult to explain it. So the grant scene has been very, I've been largely away from it. So I think the only thing I would suggest to every photographer here, and I think all of us in whatever age group we are in, we are in it for love, and then like life takes over. So I would say that the best thing would be to actually find either an alternate income or find a certain kind of photography that you do for the money, and then you fund your passion work through it. Then of course the tough thing becomes bridging the two, becomes balancing the two and not becoming either a money machine or someone great at his personal work right now but a pauper. And I've gone through different phases, like for me 2015 was being a money machine and my personal work was terrible. Today I'm over here because I'm lucky enough to be a privileged kid who does not have to pay rent in Bombay. If I did, I don't think I would have been able to do a lot of this work. If I did, I wouldn't have been able to work at a magazine that does not pay very well, because publishing does not pay very well. But I did it because for me it was not an investment of the FD kinds or the mutual fund kinds. but it was the greatest ever investment I could have made. And that's the only answer. It takes time. It takes a hell of a lot of time, and we have to have the patience that it's a long, winding, lonely road, which yeah, we will not always survive on, but hopefully we'll keep coming back to it. Yeah.
Good evening.
Hi.
According to you, what does go through your mind when you take a camera on your hand and before clicking the shot?
That's a good question, but I don't know. Okay, it depends, because at one level, I happen to be a very intuitive photographer. And again, it's my approach, which, it's not about being better or worse. Then I can't do the carefully constructed, staged, pre-planned, researched thing as well. That's not me. So when I spoke about always seeking that something else, when I spoke about the fact that I just said that I try that my work has that, and so for me, every single photograph I make, and the thing is, I have my camera all the time, which is a very terrible cliche, to be honest. We all say, oh, carry your camera everywhere. But for me, it's not just about a cell phone or whatever. I carry my camera everywhere, which is usually a light full frame SLR and DSLR and an obnoxiously heavy lens, because I prefer to work on a 35 1.4. And carrying it everywhere, I'm just building up my reflexes, I'm building up my instincts, not just technically, not just photographically, not just compositionally, that I will look at it in this composition, but also in terms of how I react to certain subjects. So, I guess, for instance, you saw a lot of portraits of women in Clementine, which I don't know whether you'd call them portraits, but lots of photographs of women. Aside from these, I've been making a lot of, say, a little more conventionally direct, but in my way, portraits of women over the past year and a half too. Earlier, just before that, I couldn't do a portrait, and I was on the commission shoot. If I had a team, if I had a second photographer with me, I would say, "Yaar, portrait karna hai, tu kar le." Like, you manage this side, I will do the spontaneous, documented thing, because I didn't know how to talk to people. I didn't know how to engage with them. I could talk to them without a camera in my hand, but actually, when somebody says that, hey, okay, you can photograph me, and I'm like, okay, what do I do? Like that used to be the case. And then all these months of doing it over and over again has again built that instinct. So do I think really when I'm photographing a person or a place? I don't. And I'm not overtly intellectualizing this, but it's true that sometimes your subconscious memory ends up doing things. There was a photograph in Part-Time Lover of Mother Mary with a leaf that's covering Mother Mary. It's been shot with flash. It's a certain kind of aesthetic that, to be honest, I'm still trying to shed that inspiration. Photographers like Swapan Parekh, photographers like Raghubir Singh have used the on-camera flash in settings like these rather well, and that's something I've been inspired by. And then while shooting it, while instinctively looking at it, through the corner of my viewfinder, I see that there is a half-tone poster of Bal Thackeray, which you see all over Bombay, but this was the Catholic village of one of the Catholic villages of Bombay. I don't mean to bifurcate this by religion, but usually what happens is that in these narrow bylanes there are usually no political posters, or people at least don't wouldn't stick a political poster, which is illegal, whatever party it may be, on a Mother Mary statue. But here there was one, and it was half, not toned, but half faded, because it's obviously a very old sticker. And My first photograph was without that poster because I hadn't seen it. And then instinctively, without thinking, I happened to include it in the next shot. Because later I realized that subconsciously that was so important for me. That was so important because Part-Time Lover is not so much about my love for Bombay. The reason it's called Part-Time Lover is because, the reason it's called part-time is because it's about the contradictions, the love-hate relationship that ends up happening. Hate is probably a strong word, but I love that city and I'm extremely agonized by a bunch of things that are happening with it. 14 people died in a ridiculous fire 2 days ago in a pub.